It all started when my daughter-in-law, Sarah, shouted, "Why is that old leech here? We don't have space." I was standing right there, holding a small overnight bag, having just arrived at what I thought was my son's home, a home I had helped them purchase, a home where I believed I would always be welcome. The words hit me like a physical blow, sharper and more painful than any slap could ever be. I looked at my son, Mark, his face a mixture of shock and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Was it embarrassment? Guilt? I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling a cold dread seep into my bones, a dread that told me my entire world was about to unravel. Was I wrong for thinking I deserved a place in my son's life, in his home, after everything I had done for them? Tell me, honestly, would you have stood there and taken it, or would you have walked away? Let me take you back to the beginning, to a time when I thought my relationship with Mark and Sarah was strong, built on love and mutual respect. Mark is my only child, and I poured my heart and soul into raising him after his father passed away when Mark was just a boy. We didn't have much, but I worked tirelessly, sometimes 2 jobs, to ensure he had everything he needed, and most importantly, everything he deserved. I instilled in him the values of family, loyalty, and gratitude. When he met Sarah in college, I was initially delighted. She seemed sweet, ambitious, and genuinely loved Mark. I welcomed her into our small family with open arms, treating her like the daughter I never had. I helped them financially through college, paying for textbooks, rent, and even their groceries, knowing that student life was tough. I wanted them to focus on their studies without the burden of financial stress. They were always so appreciative, or so I thought. They'd hug me tight, tell me they loved me, and promise to take care of me when I was old. Those promises echo in my mind now, a cruel, mocking whisper. After they graduated, they both got good jobs, and things seemed to be going well. Mark proposed to Sarah, and I was overjoyed. I dipped into my retirement savings, the nest egg I had meticulously built over decades, to pay for a significant portion of their wedding. It wasn't extravagant, but it was beautiful, just what Sarah had always dreamed of. I wanted them to start their new life together without debt hanging over their heads. They thanked me profusely, again with those heartfelt hugs and promises. Shortly after the wedding, they started talking about buying a house. The housing market was crazy, and they were struggling to save enough for a down payment, despite their decent incomes. Mark called me one evening, sounding dejected. He said they had found their dream home, a lovely 3-bedroom in a quiet, family-friendly neighborhood, but they were short on the down payment. Without hesitation, I offered to help. I had managed to rebuild a small portion of my savings after the wedding, and I also had a small inheritance from my grandmother that I had been saving for a rainy day. I gave them a substantial amount, enough to cover their down payment and then some, truly putting my own financial future at risk, all because I loved them and wanted them to have the best start in life. They were ecstatic. Sarah even cried and told me I was the best mother-in-law anyone could ask for. They bought the house, and I was so proud, so happy for them. I even helped them move in, painting walls and unpacking boxes, feeling like a vital part of their new beginning. For the first few years, everything was wonderful. I'd visit frequently, bringing homemade meals, helping with the garden, and generally just being there for them. When their first child, my granddaughter Lily, was born, my heart swelled with a new kind of love. I spent countless hours babysitting, allowing Mark and Sarah to go on date nights or simply catch up on sleep. I adored Lily, and she adored me, always running to me with open arms, calling me Nana. It was idyllic. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Sarah became more distant, sometimes cutting our visits short, claiming she was busy. Mark, too, seemed to get busier, his calls becoming less frequent. I chalked it up to the stresses of parenthood and work, telling myself not to be sensitive. Then, a few months ago, my own situation changed dramatically. The small apartment building I lived in was sold to a developer, and all tenants were given notice to vacate. Rents in my area had skyrocketed, and I suddenly found myself in a precarious position. My savings, after helping Mark and Sarah, were minimal, and I couldn't afford a new place that was decent and safe. Panic began to set in. I called Mark, explaining my predicament. I suggested, tentatively, that I could stay with them for a little while, just until I found something affordable. I wasn't asking for a handout. I offered to pay rent, contribute to groceries, and continue helping with Lily. Their house had 3 bedrooms, one of which was a guest room that was rarely used. It seemed like a logical, temporary solution. Mark sounded hesitant on the phone, saying he needed to talk to Sarah. A few hours later, he called back, sounding strained. He said Sarah was a bit concerned about space and that they really liked their privacy, but ultimately, they said I could come for a short visit, emphasizing the word short. My heart sank a little, but I pushed down the discomfort. I was family, and this was an emergency. I packed a small bag, just enough for a few days, hoping to minimize my imposition. I sold most of my furniture and put my remaining belongings into storage, believing this was a temporary bump in the road. And that's how I found myself standing in their entryway, being verbally assaulted by my daughter-in-law. Mark immediately jumped in, trying to smooth things over. Sarah, please. Mom just got here. Be nice. But Sarah was just warming up. Her face was contorted with anger, a look I had never seen directed at me before. Nice? Mike, we talked about this. We don't have space for her. This is our home, our private space. And now she's just showing up with a bag like she's moving in. I could feel tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Sarah, I told Mark I just need a temporary place. I've offered to help with expenses, with Lily. I started, my voice trembling. She cut me off. Help? You've already helped enough by taking our money. Now you want to take our space too? We already have too much clutter, and now an extra person? It's ridiculous. My money. I finally managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. That was my down payment for your house. My wedding gift to you. Her eyes narrowed. It was a gift, Mom. You gave it to us. It's our money now. You can't just throw that back in our faces every time you want something. Mark stood there, shifting his weight, not meeting my gaze. His silence was deafening. It confirmed everything. I wasn't just an inconvenience, I was an unwanted burden, a leech. The woman I had treated like a daughter, the woman whose dreams I had helped finance, was calling me a leech in front of my own son. The betrayal was crushing. I looked at Mark again, hoping for a sign of support, a word of defense. He just looked away. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay. Not even for a night. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. You know what, Sarah? You're right. I shouldn't be here. I turned to Mark. Mark, I'm sorry I put you in this position. I'll make other arrangements. Before either of them could respond, I turned and walked out the door, the sound of Sarah's continued grumbling echoing behind me. I didn't have a plan, no place to go, just a small bag and a broken heart. I walked aimlessly for a while, the cold air doing little to numb the pain. I felt foolish, betrayed, and utterly alone. I ended up checking into the cheapest motel I could find, staring at the peeling wallpaper, wondering where I had gone wrong. How could the people I loved most in the world treat me this way? It wasn't just about the house or the money, it was about the complete disregard for my well-being, the casual cruelty, and Mark's utter failure to stand up for me. The next few days were a blur of despair. I called a few friends, but everyone had their own families and limited space. I felt like a pariah. I eventually found a tiny, run-down apartment, barely bigger than a closet, but it was all I could afford. I moved in, feeling a profound sense of loneliness and resentment. I had given them everything, and they had cast me aside like old furniture. My granddaughter, Lily, was the only bright spot. She would call me on my old flip phone, asking when Nana was coming over. It broke my heart every time. I'd tell her I was just busy, not wanting to poison her innocent mind with the truth. Mark called me a few times, asking how I was, but never apologizing for Sarah's behavior or his own inaction. He'd occasionally mention Sarah being stressed, or not herself. I listened, stone-faced, offering short, clipped answers. The warmth was gone from my voice. The thought of all the sacrifices I had made for them, the money I had poured into their lives, gnawed at me. I was living paycheck to paycheck in a dingy apartment, while they lived comfortably in a beautiful house that I had essentially bought for them. The injustice burned. I kept replaying Sarah's words, "You've already helped enough by taking our money." It wasn't their money, it was mine, a gift, yes, but a gift that had come with an unspoken understanding of family and reciprocal care. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I could continue to be the quiet, suffering mother, taking whatever crumbs of affection they occasionally threw my way, or I could do something. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have let it go, or would you have fought back? The anger festered inside me, slowly turning into a steely resolve. I consulted with a lawyer, a family friend I had known for years. I laid out the entire situation: the down payment, the wedding expenses, my financial vulnerability, their comfortable living situation, and Sarah's cruel words. He listened patiently, taking notes. When I finished, he looked at me with a sympathetic but serious expression. "This is tricky," he said. "The money for the down payment was technically a gift, which makes it hard to reclaim. However, the context of that gift, your clear intention to help them establish a family home, and their subsequent abandonment of you, could potentially be argued as a breach of implied contract or even elder financial abuse, depending on how it's framed. It's not a guarantee, but there might be a path forward, especially if you can prove you are in financial distress directly caused by your contributions to their assets." He suggested a few strategies, one of which involved sending a formal letter, hinting at legal action, to see how they would react. He advised against going straight to court, as it would be costly and emotionally draining, but to use the threat as leverage. I decided to follow his advice. I asked him to draft a formal letter outlining my contributions, my current financial hardship, and the expectation of support that had been implicitly established through years of family interactions and specific promises. The letter wasn't demanding the entire down payment back, but it highlighted the moral and ethical implications of their actions and suggested a framework for them to provide some form of financial support, perhaps a monthly stipend, or even a smaller sum to help me secure more stable housing. I was nervous, my hands shaking as I authorized the letter to be sent. I knew this would either mend things, or irrevocably break them. A few days later, Mark called, his voice strained and angry. "Mom, what is this letter? Are you serious? You're suing us?" Sarah was in the background, her voice shrill. "She's trying to take our house, Mark. That old leech." The words hit me again. But this time, they didn't break me. They fueled my resolve. "I'm not suing you, Mark," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I'm stating my case. I helped you buy that house, a house you now live in comfortably while I struggle. I asked for a temporary place, and your wife called me a leech and threw me out. You stood by and let it happen. I think it's fair that you acknowledge your responsibilities." Mark stammered, "But it was a gift, Mom. A gift. You can't just retroactively demand payment." "It was a gift given with love and an expectation of family. An expectation you and Sarah have clearly abandoned. The lawyer agrees there's a case to be made about the circumstances of that gift and your current financial hardship. He suggested that if we can't come to an amicable agreement, we might have to explore further legal options." I hated sounding so cold, but I couldn't back down. I was fighting for my dignity and my future. The conversation ended with him shouting something about me being manipulative and heartless, and me hanging up, my heart aching but my resolve firm. A few more days passed in tense silence. Then, another call from Mark, but this time his tone was different. He sounded defeated. Sarah must have realized the seriousness of the situation. My lawyer had explained that even if I didn't win a full recovery of the down payment, a drawn-out legal battle would be expensive, time-consuming, and would certainly impact their reputation and potentially their credit. It was a threat they couldn't ignore. "Mom," Mark began, "Sarah and I have been talking. We realize we handled things badly." He paused, and I could hear Sarah whispering something in the background. "We're willing to offer you something. A settlement, outside of court." My heart pounded. This was it. The moment of truth. I listened carefully as he laid out their offer. They were willing to pay me a lump sum, enough to cover a significant portion of a down payment on a small, affordable condo, and they also offered to cover my rent for the first 6 months. It wasn't everything I had given them, but it was enough to get me back on my feet, to secure a stable home without being dependent on their fickle affections. I negotiated a little, asking for a slightly larger sum to cover moving expenses and some basic furniture, and surprisingly, they agreed. It was a victory, but a bittersweet one. I signed the agreement, and the money was transferred. With that money, I found a lovely, small one-bedroom condo in a quiet senior-friendly community. It was mine, truly mine, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. I furnished it simply, but warmly, making it a true home. The relationship with Mark and Sarah, however, remained fractured. They sent me Christmas and birthday cards, always signed by Lily, but the personal connection was gone. I no longer babysat Lily, though I still talked to her on the phone frequently, keeping our bond alive, away from her parents' interference. I explained to her, in simple terms, that Nana had her own home now, and it was a bit far for frequent visits, but that I loved her very much. I made sure she knew it wasn't her fault. Mark and Sarah never truly apologized, not directly, not genuinely. They always skirted around it, saying they were sorry for the misunderstanding or sorry things got complicated. I knew what they were sorry for, the legal threat and the financial cost. Not for the pain they had caused me. The aftermath was a profound lesson in self-preservation. I learned that sometimes, even family, the people you've sacrificed everything for, can turn their backs on you. I learned that your worth isn't determined by how much you give, but by how much you value yourself. I also learned the importance of formalizing financial agreements, even with loved ones, to avoid such heartbreaking situations. I am now rebuilding my life, financially independent and emotionally stronger. I still love Mark, my son, but the naive trust one once had is gone. Our relationship is now one of guarded politeness, a pale shadow of what it once was. Sarah, I rarely speak to, and I certainly don't consider her family anymore. Lily, however, is a constant source of joy, and I make sure our bond remains strong, a separate, beautiful connection untainted by her parents' actions. My current life is simple, peaceful, and free from the drama and disrespect I endured. I have my own space, my dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I stood up for myself. It was a painful journey, but I emerged from it with a newfound strength and clarity. So, that's my story. It's a harsh reminder that not all family is truly family when push comes to shove, and sometimes, you have to fight for what you deserve, even if it means confronting the very people you love. Like this video if you were on my side and believe I did the right thing. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll be reading every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.